It's all rosy for 2.5 years. But then
Mhm.
after that, you become roommates.
Jessica
This is my
Alba.
husband Cash, so I do know what that is.
I know who that guy.
Who is that guy? He's
For
correcting me.
years, Jessica Alba was the image of stability. Wife, mother, entrepreneur, quietly balancing Hollywood with real life. She didn't chase the spotlight. She built a life beyond it. But then everything shifted. One day she was posting Easter photos with her kids. The next, her marriage was over. No press conference, no dramatic fallout, just a deleted Instagram post and a carefully worded message about growth and evolution. Most people didn't even realize she was single, but someone else did. And just 6 months later, cameras caught her stepping off a plane from Cancun, hand in hand with a younger man. Not just anyone either. A rising Marvel star, a bold move.
Jessica Alba is getting divorced from her husband of 17 years, Cash Warren. They have no prenup. They live in California.
And a relationship that might have started long before the world noticed. Is this Jessica Alba's real new beginning? Or is there more to this story than she's letting on? Because when a Hollywood power couple ends in silence, it's never really quiet. It was supposed to be a routine celebrity airport sighting. July 14th, 2025. Humid air, flashing paparazzi bulbs, and Jessica Alba walking through LAX with the calm of someone used to the noise. But something was different. She wasn't alone. Right beside her, laughing, casually wheeling a suitcase, sunglasses tucked into his shirt, was Danny Ramirez. The 32-year-old actor had been steadily climbing the Hollywood ladder. With breakout roles in Top Gun, Maverick, and the upcoming Captain America, Brave New World, Danny had built a reputation as the next big thing.
Back in 2004 on the set of Fantastic Four. Obviously, Jessica Alba was the iconic Susan Storm.
But now he was part of a completely different headline. Jessica and Danny, together, returning from Cancun. For fans still processing her quiet divorce from husband Cash Warren, the father of her 3 children and her partner of nearly 2 decades, this sighting didn't just raise eyebrows. It dropped jaws. Because this wasn't a dinner date. This wasn't a caught leaving the same restaurant headline. This was a shared vacation, same flight, same bags, same pace. The chemistry was unmistakable. What's more, the photos weren't staged. They didn't play to the cameras. They looked relaxed, like a couple already months in. And that's when people began asking the real questions. Was this rebound timing?
It's a new era for Jessica Alba as she is now embracing the single life, following her quiet split from her longtime husband.
Or had Jessica been quietly detaching long before the headlines ever caught up? The story of their marriage, the quiet cracks, and the emotional unraveling, it had been unfolding silently. And now, just 6 months after the world found out she was separating from Cash, she wasn't just divorced. She was done. She was moving forward. And Danny Ramirez was part of that next page. But if this airport arrival was the first public hint of her new life, the real signs had already been there. Buried in deleted captions, disguised as self-care, and hidden in posts about healing and transformation. Because Jessica's goodbye wasn't loud. It was quiet, intentional, and far more revealing than it seemed.
Jessica Alba and her husband are getting divorced, but that's not really what I want to talk about. It's more so what she's.
When Jessica Alba announced her split from Cash Warren, the tone was graceful. Almost too graceful. There was no anger, no scandal. Just a softly worded Instagram post in January 2025 that felt more like a mindfulness journal entry than a divorce announcement. I'm proud of how we've grown in our marriage over the last 20 years, she wrote. And now it's time for us to embark on a new chapter of growth and evolution as individuals. On the surface, it read like closure. Mature, mutual, controlled. But the post didn't last. Within days, it was gone. Deleted without explanation. And for fans who had followed their love story since 2004, that silence spoke louder than the words ever did.
Nobody realizes that Jessica Alba made 3 shocking decisions to save her marriage. Even her 3 children became pawns in the process.
Because if everything was truly as respectful and harmonious as the caption claimed, why erase it? The truth. Jessica wasn't just announcing a breakup. She was protecting something. Not her past, her future. That post marked the line between who she had been and who she was becoming. It was the farewell message of a woman done with compromise. And the deletion? It wasn't regret. It was strategy. She had said what she needed to say, then stepped away before the headlines twisted it into something it wasn't. Because behind that statement of growth was a much deeper shift. After 16 years of marriage and 3 children, Jessica wasn't just ending a relationship, she was shedding an entire identity.
All right, let's go, my queen, Claire J.
Hey, so you bagged him.
No more couple photos, no more partner routines, and no more assumptions about who she was supposed to be now that she wasn't part of a power duo. But here's where things get even more revealing. Around the same time that posts disappeared, eagle-eyed fans began noticing something new. Jessica's showing up differently. Her content shifted. The captions got more introspective, her tone more grounded. It wasn't performative sadness or curated optimism. It was someone processing, rebuilding, and slowly stepping into something unknown. And we now know that something, or someone, had already entered the frame. 6 months later, when photos surfaced of Jessica returning from Cancun with actor Danny Ramirez,
Jessica Alba's new boyfriend, Danny Ramirez, is exposed. Do you know who her ex-boyfriends are? First of all, Jessica...
Everything clicked. This wasn't a sudden romance. This was a transition that had already begun while the world was still catching up. The public may have read her caption as closure, but Jessica had written it as intention. Because sometimes the real story isn't in what's posted. It's in what gets deleted. And sometimes endings are just a cover for quiet beginnings. Jessica Alba and Cash Warren didn't fall apart overnight. Their divorce filing in early 2025 might have made headlines, but the cracks had been forming long before the paperwork caught up. To the public, they still looked like a tight-knit family. There were family outings, Christmas photos, shared birthday celebrations, even Universal Studios trips just weeks before their separation.
So y'all let me know in my Jessica Alba video that her husband, Cash Warren, he biracial. I had no idea.
It all looked fine, warm even. But behind the coordinated Instagram posts and curated captions, the rhythm had changed. Because while they were still doing all the right things, holiday cards, Lakers games, Super Bowl selfies, the spark had quietly dimmed. They were together, but not connected. In the months leading up to their split, something became clear in Jessica's behavior. She was preserving the image of family, even as the core of it evolved. One of the last major events they attended as a unit was a movie screening with their daughters. On the surface, it looked like a supportive moment. But then came a subtle detail that fans didn't miss. Jessica captioned the post about her daughters wearing vintage pieces from her red carpet archive.
Did I tell you about the time that I used to work with Jessica Alba's brother? Well, the A-list actress who had a lucrative...
No mention of cash, no sentimentality, just a nod to the past, styled for the present. Even in that post, she was already handing the spotlight to the next generation, moving her narrative away from wife and mother towards something more individual, more personal. And there was something else happening too. Behind the scenes, Jessica had started using her platform not just to talk about wellness, but transformation. She referenced the year of the snake in one New Year's post, symbolizing rebirth, shedding, metamorphosis. It wasn't just an aesthetic rebrand, it was a quiet confession. She was letting go of an old skin. And Cash? He wasn't resisting it. He was participating in the closure. They celebrated Easter together even after filing for divorce.
Looks like 2025 is going to be the year of fresh starts because Jessica Alba and her husband Cash Warren are separating after 6
She wrote a heartfelt Father's Day post praising him as warm, kind, and present. They weren't faking a happy ending. They were showing how two people can end a chapter without burning the book. But just because it was respectful doesn't mean it wasn't painful. They had been through nearly 2 decades of evolution. Through celebrity status, business ventures, and parenting 3 children, they'd grown up together. And now they were growing apart. Not through scandal, not through betrayal, but through slow, parallel changes that eventually became permanent distance. So when Jessica finally filed the paperwork and quietly removed the post announcing it, she wasn't just ending a marriage. She was making room for the next story. one that had already begun to unfold, just off camera.
Alba and Cash Warren's breakup has unfolded with a mix of public statements, subtle hints, and
To the outside world, Jessica Alba's connection with Danny Ramirez looked like it came out of nowhere. A tropical vacation, a few blurry airport photos, a wave of online buzz about the 32-year-old rising Marvel star seen walking beside one of Hollywood's most private icons. But in truth, this wasn't a fling born out of post-divorce impulse. This wasn't sudden. It was quietly unfolding. Danny Ramirez had already built a name for himself through roles in Top Gun, Maverick and the upcoming Captain America, Brave New World. With a sharp jawline, charismatic presence, and a career on the brink of breakout, he was exactly the kind of person who could blend confidence with subtlety. Someone who didn't need attention to prove he was important.
Did Jessica Alba and Cash Warren just call it quits after 17 years of marriage? Stay tuned for the full.
And that's what made him the perfect contrast to Jessica's longtime partner, Cash Warren. Cash was behind the scenes, a producer, businessman, family man. Danny? He was a spotlight stepper, a man on the verge of becoming a household name. And yet, he carried himself like someone who didn't mind staying quiet, at least for a while. Sources close to Jessica hinted that their connection started well before the Cancun getaway. That while the public was just beginning to see her as a single woman, she had been emotionally shifting into new space for months. And Danny? He wasn't an escape. He was a mirror. Someone who reflected the version of Jessica she was becoming. Younger, freer, more daring.
The couple, who share 3 kids, married in 2008. Jessica Alba has retained a divorce attorney in her breakup.
It's no coincidence that their first sighting together came just after Jessica declared 2025 her year of transformation. She wasn't searching for validation. She was reclaiming identity. And Danny Ramirez, intentionally or not, became the symbol of that reclamation. There were no soft launches, no coy captions, just a firm, visible presence. He didn't need to post her. She didn't need to tag him. Their appearance together said everything without saying a word. And that's exactly how Jessica plays her hand. Never loud, always deliberate. So by the time those airport photos dropped, this wasn't the beginning of a flirtation. This was already a story in motion.
I think that no matter what role, whether I was doing like a dance movie, to inspire.
From the outside, Jessica Alba and Cash Warren's post-divorce life looked almost too perfect. Easter brunches, family selfies, warm Father's Day tributes with words like kind, present, and always knowing just what to say. To the public, it looked like a blueprint for amicable separation. 2 people gracefully uncoupling while keeping their kids at the center. But behind every curated Instagram post was a more complicated truth. Jessica and Cash had been navigating this quiet unraveling for months, maybe even years. And the carefully timed holiday photos weren't just celebrations, they were signals. Not of reunion, but of control. Control over the narrative. Control over what the world was allowed to see.
Talking about people, I have people asking me that, Jessica Alba was kidnapped when she was 15, but it turns out it's not true. This article writes, yes.
Because while Jessica's caption said co-parenting, her eyes sometimes said exhaustion. And Cash, ever the behind-the-scenes operator, wasn't giving interviews, wasn't offering quotes. He was simply showing up. Physically, yes. But emotionally, that's harder to prove. Sources close to the couple hinted that their separation had been in motion long before the divorce papers were signed, but they waited. For the holidays, for the brand partnerships, for the right moment to finally admit that love wasn't enough anymore. Not the kind they had anyway. Even the most heartfelt gestures, like Jessica calling Cash the best dad our babies could ask for, were steeped in strategic compassion.
Does anyone ever wonder what happened to Jessica Alba? Now, if you ask me, Jessica is most recognizable for her role as Susan Storm, aka
the kind that protects reputations, that shields children, that ensures headlines stay soft even when real-life emotions aren't. And yet, there's something quietly admirable in that. Because while some celebrity breakups explode in scandal, Jessica and Cash chose silence over spectacle. They chose diplomacy over drama. And in doing so, they created the illusion of peace. even if it came at the cost of hiding what was actually breaking. But just beneath that polished surface, something else was brewing. A quiet shift in Jessica, a kind of resolve. One that said, this chapter is closing, but the story's far from over. While the public watched Jessica Alba's marriage dissolve with polished grace, something more powerful was unfolding just beneath the surface.
Did Jessica Alba and Cash Warren just call it quits after 17 years of marriage? Stay tuned for the full
A transformation that had nothing to do with divorce and everything to do with rediscovery. In her own words, 2025 was her year of the snake. But this wasn't about astrology. It was about shedding skin, about growth through discomfort, letting go of what no longer served her, even if that included a 20-year relationship. On the outside, she was still the celebrity mom, the honest company founder, the red carpet regular. But behind closed doors, Jessica was relearning who she was without the safety net of we. In a now-deleted Instagram reflection, she didn't rant. She didn't blame. She simply said, "It's time for us to embark on a new chapter of growth and evolution as individuals."
Jessica Alba and her husband, Cash Warren, are getting a divorce after 17 years. That's a long time.
But it was what came next that said everything. She started posting differently, less posed, more present. She spoke about conscious flexibility, shedding rigidity, and making space for self-improvement. She even described her year as one filled with rebirth, joy, and sisterhood. No longer just the woman who stood beside Cash Warren, Jessica became the woman standing fully on her own. And yet, she never played the victim. She framed the divorce not as an ending, but a pivot, a necessary departure from a shared life that had run its course. And instead of hiding the transition, she owned it. With grace, with honesty, and with a kind of quiet strength that felt earned.
Prenup, even if you're not rich yet. Everyone thinks that if you ask for one, it's unromantic. It means that you think that you're going to get divorced.
Because while the world zoomed in on her new romance with Danny Ramirez, the real love story was happening behind the scenes. Jessica learning to choose herself. And just when it looked like she was finally settling into this new solo rhythm, something unexpected happened. A new chapter, a new companion, and the start of something no one saw coming. When Jessica Alba first crossed paths with Danny Ramirez, it wasn't headline-worthy, it wasn't scandalous, it wasn't even romantic, at least not at first. But something about him stood out. Danny wasn't just 12 years younger. He was fresh energy, ambitious, grounded, and emotionally present in a way Jessica hadn't felt in years.
Jessica Alba and her husband, Cash Warren, are reportedly ending their marriage after nearly 17 years together. The couple, who tied the knot.
While the world saw him as the Marvel guy or the new Hollywood rising star, Jessica saw something more intimate. A calmness, a kind of open confidence that didn't try to compete with her legacy, but respected it. And that's what made it different. He didn't chase her. He didn't need to. Instead, he listened. He showed up. Quietly, consistently. And when Jessica was ready to let someone in again, not to replace, but to reflect, he was there. By the time they were spotted returning from their Cancun vacation, it wasn't some whirlwind rebound. It was two people who had already built something in private. Something rooted not in passion or escape, but in understanding.
Jessica Alba and Cash Warren have put their LA home on the market amid their divorce, nearly 2 months after the actress filed.
Because Danny entered her life at the exact moment she was redefining herself. She wasn't looking for validation. She wasn't trying to be seen. She was choosing carefully, deliberately. And Danny, with his quiet charisma and unforced presence, offered something she hadn't had in a long time: emotional oxygen. He didn't remind her of the past. He invited her into the future. And maybe that's why their pairing confused people, because it didn't fit the narrative. It wasn't about age gaps, status, or headlines. It was about something subtler. A woman who had spent 2 decades holding space for everyone else was finally letting someone hold space for her.
Why did Jessica Alba abandon her 20-year relationship with Cash Warren and choose Danny Ramirez, who's 12 years younger? Can you believe?
For nearly 2 decades, Jessica Alba lived a story that many admired from the outside. A successful actress, devoted mother, thriving entrepreneur, and the steady partner in a marriage that seemed to have weathered Hollywood's worst storms. But beneath the curated snapshots and polished interviews was a woman growing, evolving, quietly outgrowing the life she had built. And now, we're seeing what happens when she finally chooses herself. Her split from Cash Warren wasn't a scandal. It wasn't an implosion. It was an act of honesty. The kind of honesty that takes years to reach. Because it's one thing to build a life with someone. It's another to know when that life no longer fits who you're becoming.
Protect our children's future. So let's not just talk about making a difference. Climate change affects everyone.
Jessica didn't burn bridges. She built boundaries. She didn't retreat into bitterness. She stepped into reflection. And through all of it, birthdays, school events, co-parenting holidays, she showed us that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means releasing with grace. Enter Danny Ramirez, not as a headline, but as a symbol. Not of replacement, but of renewal. Because this isn't the end of Jessica Alba's love story. It's a new chapter. One written in her own words, on her own timeline. A chapter defined not by labels or legacy or who she's supposed to be with, but by who she is now. And if her past has taught us anything, it's this. Jessica Alba doesn't follow scripts. She writes them. And this one,
Jessica
it's just
Alba's
getting
next
started.
chapter includes